Did an internship at White Oak in their gardens with their fruit orchards. My husband was an intern at Polyface and learned all the animals, so we both feel like we've worked for both. We've interned, each of us at one of them, so we feel like we have a really good base as far as East Coast farms. Well, who else is going to grow like this? Nobody else is growing like this. Who will we support? Yeah. There's not somebody else doing what we're doing, and so we felt like we're going to keep going this way. And
you're interplanting more than really anything.
As much as I can.
Yeah.
And what I've found is it totally helps with the weeds, which we always need help with. But it also, if you companion plant well, everything benefits. If you don't have grit and you can't muster it in yourself, like, just don't do it.
We're at Verdant Acres, and you are Mary.
Yep.
You have a lot of history here. A lot of, you just have a lot of history here, and you're doing a lot with the land that you have. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing on your farm here.
We are a 40-acre regenerative farm. We have this, I'm more the garden fruit side, my husband is more the animal side. So we both did internships. I did an internship at White Oak in their gardens with their fruit orchards. My husband was an intern at Polyface and learned all the animals, so we both feel like we've worked for both. We've interned, each of us at one of them, so we feel like we have a really good base as far as East Coast farms that are doing it right.
Yeah.
So my husband does broilers, egg layers, sheep, hogs, cattle. We've done the occasional turkey out on pasture, so everything's out on pasture. We've chosen to go the soy-free organic feed route for animals like chickens and pigs that eat that, so the monogastrics. But otherwise, outside, everything's moving, focusing on fertility and building up the soil. The garden is more my baby. Up here, you'll see there's a lot more clay. So when we moved here and had our first soil tests, they said it's pretty much potter's clay. No carbon material, nothing. All of this was sod and trees when we moved in. So we just took a bobcat and slothed off the grass and did our best. We didn't have a whole lot of funds, so we planted right into the clay. We lost a lot to bugs. But as we got more customers, which means we had more funds to reinvest, we brought in compost. We're as close to no-till as possible. We might use tilling to open up a piece of land, but like this, we're solarizing a bed so that we're not having to till.
Right.
When you peel this back and you look, there's still worms, there's still bugs, but we're just trying to kill the weeds so that we're not tilling. I've worked on a certified organic farm, and the certification still allows for spraying, so you can still use pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all of which are poisonous to us. They're poisonous to bees, and we have a lot of kids, and we just didn't want to be spraying things that are killing the wildlife. Yeah. And I don't want cancer down the road because I'm using a naturally occurring arsenic. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works, isn't it? Because they say, oh, it's an organic product, and organic, I think, has a commercial term, but then also like the science term of organic. Yeah. And you're like, I mean, arsenic and lead and cadmium?
They all occur naturally.
They're all naturally occurring, but they all are poisonous. Yeah. So, and even water can be poisonous. I mean, you can drink too much water, right? Yeah. So you choose not to get the certification because you're doing it without anything. Is that right?
Two reasons. So we are primarily selling to customers that we know. We see their families, they can come here. If we were a grocery retailer, I could see the value in that because people are shopping for stickers and labels.
That makes
for
sense.
us, beyond organic would probably be a better term because I know the certifications, I know what's required, and we're going above. You know, we're not just saying, oh, well, we can use all these, this is my list of no's. It's, okay, well, that's not improving my soil. What can I do to make this better season over season over season, which is above the no-no list. So we're doing more than that. So if you look here in this lettuce bed, this has been under management for about 2 seasons. You can see it's still pretty red. And what I want to show you is here we have garlic with strawberries planted underneath. This is our first year of our strawberry U-pick. And what I really want to show you is that this land that's been the most managed for us, just that you can grow soil. We know we were talking about there's 57 cycles of soil, but with proper management, you can
This is not inputted soil. This is what you've grown.
This is both compost and no-till methods that continue to build.
But you haven't brought soil onto this. This has just been going from
compost,
the ground up.
Yep, just compost
Wow.
and broad forking. And when we cut a plant out, we leave the roots intact so that the whole micro community is hanging out there.
Yeah.
They still have their hotel. They still can eat. They still can do. And then I come back in and I put in my next crop. This is also me putting on. This is years of having chickens over winter in here with mulch and straw. And you know, it's not a fast process. We've been here 5 years, but this is what, 5 years of intensive
Look at that.
management in a garden. I mean, you can see the clay. Clay's there.
Yeah,
It didn't go anywhere.
Right there. Yeah.
But that's,
I mean,
probably,
we're what, like 8 inches? 10?
oh, probably not that much. Maybe 6. Maybe I'm being shy. But, it's still full of rocks. This is a wood chip that has been worked in from the chickens.
Uh-huh.
But we're just really, really thoughtful about what we're introducing, what we're not introducing, keeping everything covered the best that we can.
Yeah, so this is just straw?
This is just straw.
Yeah.
Locally non-sprayed straw. I think that's probably one of our biggest hurdles is finding clean supplies and getting customers who want that highest level of cleanness. So we put our strawberries in here this year because it's our best soil for our U-pick so that they'd have the highest bricks possible.
The bricks value, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just as sweet as possible, as healthy as possible.
And you gave me a strawberry before we turned the camera on. There's nothing like a real fresh strawberry right from a homegrown farm. I mean, oh my gosh, it was so delicious. And this is we're towards the end of April. I guess April's almost over.
And we've had them for a month.
You've already had them for a month?
Well, I have some in the tunnel, but they've already been producing, not buckets loads, but the first fruits have been going for about a month.
Wow.
And the reason we decided to do strawberries are the highest, heaviest sprayed crop of any vegetable annual. I mean, it's a fruit.
They're always on the no-no list to get at the grocery.
Yeah.
Always.
So they're the no-no list, but like something I didn't realize is if you pick a strawberry not ripe, it will not ripen. So you pick bananas, they'll keep ripening on the shelf. The strawberries won't get any sweeter, they just rot. And so I was like, well, how does that work at the grocery? So what they do is they pick them early and they expose them to carbon dioxide, which forces the pink color. So really you're just eating unripe. That's why they're not as sweet.
A fake pink strawberry.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
So they don't ripen, they just rot.
Yeah.
So this is our tunnel. This is also, there's about 16 beds that we've been in cultivation for the full 5 years.
Wow, it's beautiful in here.
All of this, not all of this, I'd say probably 90% goes through our farm share program, which is like a CSA program, except for we do it on a monthly subscription basis so people can afford to do it, but also pause if they're going on vacation, or if they do a summer garden, they can do spring, winter, summer, or spring, winter, fall. So it's flexible so that people can keep supporting us as they need to or want to, kind of thing. So again, you can see this really good black dirt. A lot of this is, again,
like this looks like potting soil. Like this looks like something that you brought in from a bag from the store.
And dumped. And some of it is also that we're, like wherever I can, I'm doing the biggest planting container so that I am also putting, because I know how much clay I have.
Right.
It doesn't drain well, it's full of minerals, but it's not, the way that we get heat and not humidity, it just cracks and turns into potter's clay. It's just hard, it's rocky.
Oh, so you're growing like seasonal crops then? You're not trying to grow strawberries in December?
Nope.
Okay.
So we have strawberries in here because we wanted to see what does it look like. We did a trial. We want to see if we put them in the tunnel, do we get a jump? Do we not? What does that look like? Are they going to be full of fungal? So a lot of this is experimental as we go, because I don't want to open up more land that I need to manage. It's just my husband and I. We have our first part-time, full-time laborer. She comes in a couple days a week, and we have 6 kids. So it's just, it's busy.
Yeah.
So anywhere that we don't have to open up more ground to keep on top of the weeds, to fix the fertility, to do, we would prefer that. So like if you look at this bed here, there's, tomatoes and lettuce and are planted, but then you come over here and we've got, and this is all on the same bed, shallots, carrots, Asian greens, there's chard down there, You know, and then the same thing over here. We've got carrots, onions, tomatoes, lettuce.
So you're interplanting more than really anything.
As much as I can.
Yeah.
And what I've found is it totally helps with the weeds, which we always need help with. But it also, if you companion plant well, everything benefits. No, it's a diverse array. They're all have different requirements, and it ends up, and especially for us, for like carrots and onions, they're low value crops that you don't want to waste time weeding. But if you already have to weed the tomatoes, why not? You know, and that's the same thing with the garlic and the strawberries. It's a beneficial, and it makes that bed more value in the long run because they both have to get planted in October. So plant them together, pull them out together. So we're just trying to use the resources, including the soil, but our time, our money, our inputs as efficiently as possible because we're small. And we're trying to not be so expensive that people can't afford us, but also make money so we can live, you know. So
I think that's common across a lot of small farmers, especially ones that we visited, because they recognize, like, okay, food is cheap at the grocery store, but we all know that the farmer's not being paid adequately.
Right.
So being able to, like you said, make a living, a livable wage, but make sure that you can feed your community. So you said you're feeding 50 families. But you're not originally from this area. So how did you get a hold of those families? You said it's face to face.
Yep.
How did you get those families?
So we started at the farmers markets more for marketing than money, because farmers markets, where we're at, we're not by a hub. Like, we're not by any large city. So, you know, we might have 300 people that walk through a market, which if there's 300 people are not stopping at your booth. Right. 300 people are not spending money with you. So, you know, we would break on a good day $600, which when you lug all your stuff and you have a baby in your belly and a baby strapped to your back, and
they're done that,
smiling, and yes, our
and
eggs
sweating.
are that much money, and my armpits and all the things, and I'm breasting. Oh yeah, you can check. This is okay. You can, you know, like,
been there, done that a million times.
It's not worth it. Yeah, and
it's hard.
So it was getting out there, but then what we found were, most of the customers there were customers of the market. It was a social thing, which is great. That's fine. It was a support local. It's a social part of their week where they go and they get a coffee, they run into friends. Totally fine. That's great. But for us, we needed something consistent. If it rains, they weren't there. If it was cold, they're not there. And we have fresh vegetables and eggs and every week. So for us, COVID plus babies really changed the landscape for us, and we decided we're going to go to hubs. We're going to go and do this contact list. People would open their trunk, and we offered our CSA that it was a contact list because people were like, oh, there's no food in the groceries. And so we're like, we have this weekly program, and people would just come to the hub location, drive up, pop their trunk or roll down their window, and I'd set their veggies on, and away they would go. Wow. And so we were making more money in a half-hour drop-off than I was making otherwise. And when I worked at White Oak, we did a CSA. There was a vegetable CSA program, and what we did there was we would go to a market. We had our CSA, so you're doing double duty. Right. And so we were like, we just need to change and do CSA only, farm shares only. This is what works for our family at this time. It just works. And so then this year, I was doing like a whole market setup after COVID. So I would set out all your vegetables. You got to pick what you wanted, but it was only a half hour again because I'm like, I got to be home. I got to feed my kids. And so this year we've moved to a cooler setup where we have a place and they have like a 4-hour window. Okay. So I'm pre-packing everything, which they don't love as much, but they have 4 hours to pick it up. And so we've kind of doubled what our winter CSA was, being able to offer that longer window. Okay. So that has been helpful, that we can open up more beds and make more headway. And people are really starting to look for clean foods. Yeah. Not green foods, but clean foods. And so because we're not spraying, because we're not antibiotics or hormones or even dirty grains, we're trying to be as clean as possible so that when you shop here, it's just clean. Yeah. If you want to do anything else, anywhere else, that's great. But if you get it here, you're like, the vegetables are the same quality as the meats, as the eggs, and that's just kind of how we're trying to move through so that you at least know that this, whatever you get here, is solid.
We had a farmer, one of our farm tours, he said, well, you pay for it one way. You either pay for it in your food or you pay for it in your medical bills. Which would you prefer?
Yeah. And I
was like, wow, that's That's really eye-opening.
And it's not. I think medical bills, like some people are like, oh, well, I have good insurance. But I think sometimes the rub is really quality of life. Like, do you want to be in a wheelchair? Do you want to, have arthritis?
Take
from
15 pills a day.
Yeah, like what quality, just because your insurance will pay for it, what kind of quality of life do you want when you get to retire, when you get to not have to work? What kind of, what do you want?
Yeah.
And that's John and I's largest why of why we farmed. So both of us had corporate careers. I worked in the Detroit auto industry. My background is in chemistry. I did chemical legislation for clean chemicals being imported to Europe. So I worked for a silicone and rubber manufacturer that worked for O-rings and cars and windshield wipers and all that kind of stuff. And Europe was like, look, world, we don't want to take these poisonous chemicals in products in our countries anymore. And so that was my job, was to search through all of our databases and all of our chemical compounds and reach all of our manufacturers. Do you have any of these 160 chemicals that you're not allowed to have? Do you have any of these 1,000 because they're being phased out and we're not going to be able to send them anymore and all this kind of stuff? And while it's valiant work, it was awful. Like, I want to work with my hands. I want to be in the dirt. And so I started looking for internships and ended up at White Oak. Okay. But at the same time, my mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was a sophomore in college. And it progressed, and it progressed, and it progressed. And she had colon rectal cancer, which they told her was 100% due to what she ate. So her particular, which I'm sure a lot of the modern diseases are, related to what we're eating, what we're consuming. But she would go to her oncologist, and he would say, you can eat whatever you want, you can eat whatever you want, you can eat whatever, and I'm like, your cancer's caused by what you eat, you can eat whatever you want. What's going on here,
Yeah.
And so I really started looking at food and learning about the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, and that's where it started. And then I got to White Oak, and I was almost a complete vegetarian because I knew how chicken was raised. Right. And then I went and saw the kill floor at White Oak, and I was like, okay, I'll eat beef now, but it was this, like, this is the cost of eating meat. There's cost. There's cost for us. There's cost for the animal. There's cost for the land. It could be a good cost. It could be a positive thing, or it could be terrible. And I was choosing to participate in the positive change, not the terrible. Yeah. And I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm not going to have meat. You can support farms that do it right. And so my mom was battling cancer as I'm, interning at this farm and learning how to eat well and learning how to grow well. And eventually she lost.
I'm so sorry.
And then John, he's working in healthcare architect. He's building hospital suites for the sickest of the sickest. And it's multi-million-dollar buildings for these really swanky wards of people who are sick. We're talking all these machines and all this money and all this money that's being pumped into a sickness system. And so he's like, I can't do this. And he goes and interns at Polyface. So we're both kind of interning at two different farms.
You're not together. You don't know each other at all.
We don't know each other at all. Okay. And then eventually we end up getting together at White Oak, put on a project by Mr. Will. We have to learn to work together, which was awful. And then,
you're
here we are.
I cannot do a group project with you, so let's get married.
Yeah, let's do a group project for the rest of our life. And so this is the group project.
This is your group project.
This is it. This is, we're like rock tumblers. One day we'll be real smoothed out. But right now I want it this way and I want it this way, and
So that's why he does the animals and you do the vegetables? Okay.
And we cross when we need, but we're both super passionate. But this is what I was trained up in, is the vegetables, and that's what he was trained up in. Yeah. So as I need Mr. Fix-It and help and things I can't reach or lift or do, he's here. Yeah. When he needs a second hand or butchering or any of that kind of stuff or catching birds in the middle of the night, I'm his second hand there. So we both, for those reasons, but then the more you farm, the more you learn. The more you realize that those labels that are at the grocery store to protect you aren't what you think. You learn that organic chicken doesn't mean that it's outside. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's completely antibiotic free. It doesn't mean it's almost like, here's the target. As long as you can fall in that target, it's okay. Go ahead.
They
and
get sunlight, but it's one window.
Yeah, oh, free range means you get a side yard that had grass 6 batches of chickens ago. Now it's just a dirt lot. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, the picture of grass is enough for a lot of people. And we don't think about it because there's millions of dollars ensuring we don't think about it. Yeah. And we have farmers or customers all the time that are like, oh, well, I get organic chicken from Whole Foods. And I'm like, it's factory farm chicken. Let's talk about what organic chicken looks like there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what pasture-raised chicken looks like here. But its terminology is different anywhere you go.
Yeah.
So you really just have to know your farmer. You have no ideas. You have to trust that label. And that's a moving target. And it's getting easier and easier and easier to hit those targets.
Yeah.
And so it's just so important you know who's feeding you and what your standards are. Your standards might not be my standards. You might not need it to be organic and soy-free, but you want to support local. That's great too. You know, you just need to know as a consumer what you need and what you want and be willing to go find it.
Yeah.
Because it's there.
And be okay with that. I like how you said that. Like, maybe you don't care about soy-free or pasture-raised, but you want to support your local economy. Great, do that.
Yeah.
I love how open you are when you say that, because I think that's really important too. And I think, myself included, we get caught up in extreme pieces where we're like, oh, I have to do all the things all at once forever.
Right.
Like, well, no, you just have to be okay with your choice.
Right. And I think like 80-20 is a great rule. Like, we eat almost 80% off the farm.
Wow.
But when I'm done on a hard day of planting strawberries, like yesterday, I had a Corona and lime. And I'm okay with it. You know, like, or we support our local winery or our so-and-so who don't have the same standards. I don't think that it needs to be, you'll fail if you're extreme. If you're all in, you're going to go broke. You just need to make small choices and stick with them. And maybe that's just eggs. Maybe you support one good farmer for eggs.
Yeah.
And then in a month you say, okay, I'm going to do eggs and spinach or all my greens or something. Just make it something that you can keep going, or you will fail, and then you'll burn out, and then you'll have a bad experience, and then you'll guilt trip yourself, and then it just
it's a terrible cycle.
Yeah, just take small steps.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you can see, like, we're not perfect. You know, there's weeds, and you can see the clay, but you can also see, like, this section here was tarped. We just moved the tarp 2 days ago.
Okay.
So this is what it looks like instead of using an herbicide. But you can also see there's weeds where the tarp wasn't. You know? So we do the best with what we can.
You talked about how you started farming and how you and your husband came together, but why here? Like, how did you end up on this farm in particular?
Two things. We moved from Georgia back to Virginia to be close to the big kids. So family is the main driver. So this is where he's from. This is where his kids are. So we wanted to be back here. And then the rest is, you know, divine providence. We looked and looked and looked and looked at properties, and we got a first-time farmer's loan, which at that time was $300,000 maximum to purchase a farm, because we were both first-generation farmers and had 10 plus years of experience between the two of us. And so we looked and we looked, and it had to have a house, because we had 3 big kids and we had a 9-month-old. So we were like, even if it's run down, it's got to have somewhere for us to live. You know, we couldn't, in a lot of places don't want you to have a camper. There's like different codes. And so we looked at house after house after house. And because we had skills, we're like, we'll let the land dictate what we do.
Okay.
So if it's pastoral, sheep. If it's trees, goats and hogs. You know, so each different house that we looked at, we're like, we could raise this based on what there is there. So we got a call from a realtor, and he was like, sorry you didn't get the spot, but I got this diamond in the rough. It's not on the market yet. Come take a look. And we pulled up to this monstrosity, which is now my house. And there were giant dead trees with giant creepy vultures in them, and the windows were busted out, and the vines were over the tree.
And a ghost came out and shook my hand and said, hello, nice to meet you.
He said, please live here. Join us. And we got out and we saw this view. And this is my office. This is my corner office. And I said, this is the one. Yeah. And he was like, we've not even been in the house yet. And I said, you're an architect. You have construction background. I have a big vision. This is where we're going to work. This is great. This is where I want to be. We applied, and, you know, it took us, I think, 6 months to even get it, but it was seriously, God had his hand on the property, because we were able to sign the paperwork, not pay anything down, including all the lawyer's costs and everything, for like $299.99. You know, like, it was just,
wow.
And the house, like I said, it was completely run down, no power, no running water, no pump, no nothing. We thought we would have an income And we would slowly fix up our farmstead, and then eventually we'd open our own farm. But it was like, hit the ground running. Here's your broke down house that you just signed paperwork for that you owe payments on, and farm. And so we were like, so the first couple of years, and it sucked so hard. We took credit card debt, which we've never held, never had, and bought in egg layers, and bought the feed, and built the equipment, and did all the things that we thought would be, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And we just said, we're either going to make a go of it or we're going to have to work city jobs. So let's double down. And we did, and it sucked hard for a lot of years. Last summer was the first time that I was able to pay down all the credit, first time, paid it all off. We got that out from under us.
Congratulations.
That doesn't mean that we don't have other loans, so we have to,
Still, credit cards are scary, so congratulations on that. That's exciting.
But it was
awesome.
like feed and chicks and, things that we weren't expecting to put on credit cards.
Yeah.
But if you want to farm, you got to have
the animals.
Or the vegetables, the soil and the seeds and all that kind of stuff. And so we've just been every year, it's one project after the next. And the farm shares kind of kept us afloat. So that's our regular income. So as that grows, it gives us a little bit more, it's the first time we've had an employee. It's because we've had consistent enough income to be able to pay somebody to help us, So it's been a journey, and it'll continue to be a journey. So we bought it. You could stand here and not see the house. You could stand here and not see the farm store. That's what we call it, our farm store. And the 40 acres that surround the house had been vacant for about 7 years. And previous to that, it's been renters since the 70s. So just lots of quick fixes or no fixes or anything like that. And when we bought the house, the only reason we could afford it is that the water upstairs had been left running in the winter and completely flooded the kitchen. So there was no water, no power, and they sold us the 40 acres in the house for the value of the land only. So we glamped for like a month and a half in the house, and somebody had stolen the pump out, it was just
really run down.
It was super run down. There's raccoon prints on the house, inside. This side of the house, the bottom windows, the whole house was covered in ivy, and the vines had actually busted through the old wood windows and were crawling into the house. And as a gardener, I loved it, and I was like,
nature
"Can we
was
keep
taken
it?" And
over.
John was like, "No, we're not keeping that. It's got to come out."
Wow.
So we're finally 5 years in being able to seal the envelope, is what John calls it. So we're, when we get rain, it's coming in through the house, and because it's just so run down, it's just been vacant.
How old is it?
The very original property where you can see the stone foundation is 1776. And then from there, it was a stone cottage. They tore that down, used the stone for the grain barn the root cellar. And then on the other side, there's a well house pump that was a ram pump that they kept all of their dairy and meats in. So then from there, they put a house in 1800s, 1802 it was finished. It burnt down in 1880. This was the parish for the church across the way. And so then when they rebuilt it, they built it cheaply, and they took all the rubble that had burnt and made formed concrete. So the walls are 18 inches thick, which is great.
Nice insulation, I suppose.
But it's not ornate like the houses that are of that era because it had burnt down and been rebuilt. This building, earlier, we just opened this first side, and this side was really, really rough and run down. And as we go in, you'll see the exposed brick. You can see sunshine coming through the bricks. It just needs a lot of repair. So slowly, as we've had our business in here, as the farm generates money, we're just pumping it back in and trying to reclaim the buildings that were falling apart.
Yeah.
So
you said that this was sold to you that it kind of wrongly, this was they said it was a schoolhouse,
and it was so
but
it
wasn't
a
actually a
former
schoolhouse.
Slave dwelling. They think upwards of 10 people in the family lived here at one time. It's a father-son property. The father lived here and the son lived in Brownsburg, and between the two of them they had, I believe, 15 slaves, and so they don't know who lived where at what time. But it's both sides have fireplaces, so they think this was just residential, not cooking. But this portion of the farm store, as you can see with all of its peeling paint, was our original. We painted it. We did our first grand opening in 2018 when we opened to the public. but the roof was original. So like we're talking very original. The doors are original, and it just took on a lot of water. So as it was taking on water, it was peeling the paint off. And so this is our newest expansion project. This is the other side of the farm store. This is kind of where we do the farm share. This was a wall I busted out. So this was completely closed in here.
Okay.
Both ceilings are lath and plaster, the original. What makes this building pretty special is that it's one of the only like brick masonry with plaster buildings as a slave dwelling. So that, for the time era, it showed that they had money and they invested money in their slave dwellings. So he was a doctor, I believe.
Okay.
So he had more funds, whereas a lot of the other ones locally are wood or non-existent just because they didn't make it.
Yeah.
Like they didn't make it through the ages. So
Yeah.
this one was one of the nicest dwellings that they had. And what we found out our first season is neighbors of ours, he was a Christmas tree farmer, and he showed up, and I'm super pregnant, and we're getting everything ready for our grand opening, and he came in and he said, "Hi, my name is Donald Fireball, and my mama was born in this building." And so what we found out was that after slavery, even locals, so just farm families like John and I, lived in this building while somebody else lived in that house, and the farm families lived here and took care of the property while the lawyer, the doctor, the minister lived here and provided off-farm income. So we're
Wow.
one of the first farmers that live on the property and earn our income solely off the farm.
In how many years? Since the existence, like in 200 years?
I would imagine it's pretty close. So it started with, I mean, they've always farmed the property, but it's always been a doctor, a minister, somebody with an off-farm job. And most of our neighbors, it's the same. They have huge parcels that they farm industrially, but they have to have another source of income.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we're living the high life. We're living close to the edge, but we're making it happen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
For other people who are trying to do the same thing, who have the same dream, like myself, we have the same dream. One day we're gonna homestead again. I don't think we'll make it a marketable product again.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we got burnt out a little bit, but we will have a homestead. How, other than just like straight up grit and bootlaces,
Yeah.
how do you make that work?
I mean, that is if you don't have grit and you can't muster it in yourself, like, just don't do it. Just don't. And I don't mean to be rude, but when my husband and I got married, we were blended, which is hard enough. And then we started a business, which was hard enough. And then I was pregnant. And then I was wearing a baby on my back, weed eating pig paddocks and getting, poison ivy all over my neck and chest. Thankfully not on the feeders, but like, if you can't get yourself out of the bed in the morning and be like, I'm gonna do this and I'm passionate about this and I can see that vision, even if it takes 5 years, even if you can't pay your light bill, even if you pay, like there have been times where we've bought chicken feed and not gone to the grocery. It doesn't mean we starved, but we didn't get coffee or beer or chocolate or any of those like crackers or any, like, no, we're eating eggs and rice.
Rice and chicken.
That's, this is
rice
what we're
and
growing,
eggs.
this is what we're eating. And if you don't have that deep digging to do, like, just don't do it, because it's just not, you'll be burnt out, you'll be miserable. No one's gonna say, get out of bed, it's gonna be great today, or you can do it. You gotta do that. And I think it's that hope component. Like, where does your hope lie? Where does it come from? Where is your source? What's your motivation? What gets you up? Like, we love the Lord and we're trying to make a great place for our kids. And if everything falls flat, we'll still have the farm, we'll go and work other jobs. Mm-hmm. But we're building a good family, and we're doing it the way that we believe it should be done. And if we go broke,
so be it.
So be it. That sucks.
Right.
That will be
But it's not the
heartbroken.
It's not completely the end of the world.
No, but we'll still have the farm. We can still work. We can still have jobs. We can still, walking to the end of what's the worst could happen and looking at it straight in the face and saying, that could happen, but I'm still going to do it. Because you're going to be like, I'm broke, I'm hungry, I'm tired, nobody gets what I'm trying to do. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then it's so easy to fold in the towel. And there's days that we have those days, like when we had the mini burst tornadoes and it took another roof off for like maybe we're not supposed to be here. Maybe we
Yeah.
bought the wrong farm, maybe. And then our community came around us. And 30 men from our church showed up with chainsaws and cut all the trees down that had fallen on our fences and that were
Wow.
breaking things. You got to put in the work. Every day you put in work, it builds and it builds and it builds. And like the soil, it's not going to be overnight. And this is the first year in 5 years that we're breaking even, not profiting, but we're not putting in more than we're recovering.
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And you know, most farms and most businesses are out of business. I think it's like 95% of businesses go out of business in the first 5. And there's lots of points in our journey where we're like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Is this worth it? Is the stress worth it? Is it the toil worth it? Is it? And we've said it is. You know, who else is going to do it if we don't do it?
Right.
And that's kind of been our, well, who else is going to grow like this? Nobody else is growing like this. Who will we support? There's not somebody else doing what we're doing, and so we've felt like we're going to keep going this way, and you know, worst case, we have to get home jobs, then we'll grow our own chickens. And we know how, and that's great too.
At least then you can feed yourselves.
Yeah, then we can feed ourselves. But I think that's the hope component, is we're not homesteaders because we're not preparing for the end of the world. We have hope that there's a way that we all can do better.
Yeah.
And that's why we're farming, where we could just keep that knowledge and feed our family and do our own thing, and John could have a city job.
Right.
But that's not what we believe in. That's not what we're passionate. We want to provide the thing we can't find in the marketplace, which is clean protein locally.
It seems like your grit, your tenacity, your determination is just who you are, right? I think a lot of those qualities for a person are ultimately innate sometimes. But did you learn anything additional to that by working for Will? Did your husband do the same? Or was it more just like ag education?
I can remember a conversation that I had with Will Harris before I left, and I said, we're going to farm. Do you think we'll make it? And he said, well, you know, in his nice deep, and he's like, I'll tell you what, the ones that make it have grit, and you either have it or you don't. And he's like, and a lot of people don't know if they have it until they know. And I think it is that. It's that test. It's the kind of like a refining fire with gold. You don't know what you have in there until you're really put under pressure. You don't really know what you're made out of, or your marriage is made out of, or your business, or your family, until that fire gets turned up. And I think in a lot of ways, we found our weaknesses, we found our strengths, we found things that we don't want to do anymore because we just don't have either the passion or the energy to go that route for some things. I think the grit, some of it is you have it, but some of it is built, just like endurance and a muscle. It will grow, but you're the one that has to show up every day. And if you show up, it'll grow.
Yeah. So thank you for having me out and talking with me. This is so stinking cool. I love your message. I love your grit. And I think what you're doing here is really, really awesome. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is just one of those tours that you never know who you're gonna get when you're making a phone call. We call anywhere from 15 to 20 farms, and we see what they're doing is cool, but we don't dive in too deep. And seeing what they're doing here, I know it's spring, but it's just making me want to go do our homestead. But we have so many more places to go and so many more farmers to meet and things to learn. I hope that you come along with us. We are gonna keep doing live streams on the first Monday of every month. I really hope you join us for that. Thank you so much.